Hello, everyone. We'll start here in about 2 minutes. Thanks for joining. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started today. So today you're here with the Do More with Your Analyst Portal for Service Manager. My name is Seth Cousins. I am the product manager for the Service Manager and Configuration Manager line of products here at Cireson. So we'll be running through what you can do with the Service Manager portal and showing you a little bit about how we can integrate our products and some of the new stuff that's come out around that. So just a little bit about Cireson first. For those of you that have been on the webinar before, for those of you that are existing customers, you've probably already seen this. Hasn't changed too much, though the numbers have obviously changed quite a bit. We are in 65 countries. We have over 1,200 users. We've done something like 60,000 consulting hours at this point, and our renewal rate remains at 99% or above. So doing good. Thanks to all you guys out there that are current customers, and looking forward to being involved with all of you that are looking to see what Cireson can do for you. You're in good company as a customer or as a possible customer here. We are all over the board in terms of education, government, healthcare, all areas of finance and information technology. We're in consumer products. We have customers all across, and our consulting team has worked with all of them. We have quite a good store of knowledge for how to work with each of those industries. So most likely we will be a great fit for you if you give us a shot. We have 3 products in the Cireson family of solutions. The one we'll be looking at today is both the Service Manager Analyst Portal and the True Control Center. We also recently released the True Software Asset Management product, which focuses currently on Microsoft Asset Management, software asset management in terms of Office 365, your Windows licensing, and there's a lot more to come there as it expands out. Shows you your calculations, what you're using, what you're not, what your costs are, how you can save money. It's a great tool, recently released. I suggest you take a look at it. We'll have upcoming webinars. We'll also be at Experts Live this week. The Service Manager Portal is our mainstay. It's our primary product. It's the one we started everything off with and continue to develop today. We'll be looking at that today. in its current iteration, and we'll also be looking at some integration between it and the new True Control Center. The True Control Center is the renamed version of the Configuration Manager Portal. We didn't really feel that the Configuration Manager Portal itself and that naming really spoke to what we were trying to accomplish with the True Control Center. Ultimately, we're looking for something that provided additional value and did things that even the Configuration Manager console did not do. We weren't looking to replace the Configuration Manager's admin console. We're looking to provide the power of Configuration Manager to the administrator in terms of how he can distribute that power to his end users in a controlled manner, the end users being the analysts. So we'll look at some of that today today also, as we look at how it integrates with the Service Manager Portal. So the key thing that we'll be looking at today is the advanced remote support tools for the service desk and how admin teams can utilize the power of SCCM. And that's where our support more, do more terminology comes in here and what we're shooting for. So that's what we'll take a look at today. Today we'll mostly be doing a demonstration of how the new remote support tools integrate into Service Manager, and then we'll also look at the details of those new remote support tools. So this is just a little quick breakdown on what we're targeting here and what we're trying to accomplish for you. This is a screenshot of the True Control Center with the remote support tools brought up. The support teams, it allows for remote troubleshooting tools. It also allows for unlock and reset password. You can also deploy software and extend your ITSM capabilities. This is the True Control Center as a whole. What we're going to focus on today is, yes, we'll look at some of the aspects of the True Control Center, but we're really focusing on, if you have the Service Manager Portal already, how we have already integrated the True Control Center remote support into Service Manager, the Service Manager Portal. And then we'll also talk just briefly about what's to come as well. From the administrator side of things, the True Control Center allows for simplified security, allows you to delegate some of the tasks down to end users in a more controlled fashion, and then still allows for software, OS, and MBT deployments, things that you may hand down to your help desk, or just provides a quicker web-based interface for those things. And then we also provide dashboard reports and advanced administration troubleshooting. So that really goes back to this remote support and this remote troubleshooting that we'll talk about today. So I'm going to go ahead and swing over to my lab here. So the first thing we want to look at today is, of course, the Service Manager Portal. So with the upcoming release of Service Manager, the Service Manager Portal, or SMP as we like to call it, SMP 8.4, with the release of 8.4, we will include the ability to integrate with the True Control Center. We're expecting 8.4 to go out next week, so it's not far around the corner here. So the first aspect of that is how you would integrate. So it's pretty simple. If we go to our admin settings, inside our admin settings, we have a new integration settings section. And as things continue to progress, this is, of course, will expand out further. But looking at this today, all you need to provide is your True Control Center URL. So you provide that URL, and that sets up the integration for this particular piece. So looking at how that integrates, if we go to our active work here, we'll pull up an incident. And the key to how that integrates today, and some of that is what's important, is to understand what the remote support tools are, and we'll talk about that here in just a second. But the integration is pretty simple. So once you're in your view here, if you have, say, a set of affected configuration items, these were randomly generated for me. But say I have a client that is affected on this particular user, and so I want to go ahead and add that client to the affected user. When it's a Windows computer object, we detect that, and then we demonstrate this little icon here, and you can see this is the True Control Center logo. And so once that's in there, I'll go ahead and apply this just so it saves for me. Once that's in there, we can utilize that icon to launch the remote support tools from the True Control Center. In the future, we'll also be providing the same sort of interface for users. So if you have a user object, say an analyst like this one here, you'll identify the True Control Center icon here, and it'll provide much the same capability that we're about to show you, except that we'll provide it directly here within the Service Manager portal. So looking at that, we can go ahead and click that icon. When we click that icon, it brings up the slide out, and this is the remote support tools. So as it loads that, it'll bring in the remote support tools interface. So what we have here is our client 02's remote support interface. It's the same thing as remote manage in terms of the capabilities, but this is built into the True Control Center. So we'll take a look at the True Control Center in a little bit here to see where this is coming from. And then we're bringing that data in here. So from here, we have our client information. It's a good bit of client summary information. That client summary information includes things like disk space, operating system, total physical memory, the health of the client based off of the configuration manager report on that health. And then also whether or not it is reboot pending, who the primary users are, a lot of information here. Some of this information is actually not available directly in Configuration Manager. Some of it you'll actually find inside the computer itself, and that's where our Remote Manage capabilities come in. If any of you have ever used Remote Manage, say you have Configuration Manager and you've used Remote Manage previously, you'll recognize that there is a bit of information that you can get from Remote Manage that you actually doesn't get stored in Configuration Manager itself. What we've done here is we've pulled those two pieces together, Configuration Manager and Remote Manage, and we've demonstrated how you can pull that data back from the client and show it in a different fashion. So we indicate that with the little computer icon here. The little computer icon indicates that this is coming directly from the client. It's then cached on the server side so that you can access that information later. As you can see here, there's a pull button. This pull button actually initiates the Remote Manage functionality. It actually reaches from the server out to the client, and using WMI, it pulls back all of the information that Remote Manage needs. So that includes things like whether or not there's a reboot pending, what the actual total physical memory is on that particular client versus what Configuration Manager tracks, which is the available memory at time of install of the OS. It'll also bring back software, hardware. We'll look at some of that here in a second. But once it goes out, reaches out to the client in real time and pulls back that data, caches it for us so we can then look through here. And then we have an indicator here that tells us the last time that it was cached. Should the client not be accessible from the server, this green icon will be grayed out, and this will be grayed as well, just to indicate that the client is offline or inaccessible. And when we look here, excuse me, at the actions and logs here in a second, that area will also be grayed out for commands that you can't run unless the client's online. So looking at that, go to Actions and Logs. This is our Actions and Logs section. This is the Remote Manage actions that have now been brought into the web interface. So from here, you can run actions against the client itself. Includes things like the heartbeat DDR, hardware inventory cycles. You can kick those off right away. You can reboot the machine and shut down the machine. So if I wanted to reboot this, I could click reboot. You can see we get a nice little confirmation warning here to let us know that this is going to cause a reboot. Go ahead and cancel out of that. And then from here, we can also launch local actions. So some of those local actions are the ability to launch remote desktop session, the ability to launch remote control, log folder launching, and open a Explorer view directly to the C# to the C share. So C is that $, the administrative share on that particular client. We also have the ability to go through group policy. We can even launch PowerShell against that. So if we were to click this icon here, we get a, oh, my lab's a little slow today. We'll look at that in a little second when it catches up. But when you can also do repair configuration manager, reset policy, and uninstall the configuration manager client itself. From here, you can reinstall the operating system if you have that configured within the True Control Center. You can also clear the machine itself from True Control Center. You can clone the machine, delete the machine, or clear PXE. For those of you that work with the more administrative side of Configuration Manager, these actions probably are pretty obvious. On the WMI side, you can actually verify the WMI, make sure that it's working correctly. So I can go ahead and run that. And then that'll verify that the WMI is running correctly. We also have the option to repair or reset WMI. If we look at the log section here, we can actually see what commands we've been running. So we have the client refresh commands, the machine policy commands that I've run in the past here. Scroll to the right a little bit. You can also see which client this is run against, which obviously it's run against this particular client since we're in this view. So going to collections, you can also see from a configuration manager perspective what collections this machine is in. We can also add the machine to collections if there's any available that it's not currently in. In my particular environment, I don't have any that it's not a part of. Under hardware, we can see the client itself. A lot of this information comes in from Configuration Manager, but some of it actually comes in from the remote manage poll that we did earlier. So what that does is it brings in the memory, shows where the memory's at, shows uptime, reboot. Some of that you'll recognize from the summary. But there's also some things that we pull in that you can't get from Configuration Manager outside of just these little indicators and this bit of information. We also pull in printer data. So when we do the remote manage poll, we pull in printer data for the machine. So we can see what printers are installed, whether or not it's a network printer, whether or not it's the default printer, and then the actual printer device name. If it's a network printer, it'll also display the server name for that particular network printer. That information is not tracked within Configuration Manager, especially not the network printer information. So we provide that information here based off of that poll from the remote manage. On the network side, we also pull in network adapter information. So you can see that there's quite a bit of network adapter information in here. And then we also, if it has an IP address, we capture that IP address. So there's the IP address of the client, shows the subnet that it's on, and the default gateway this particular one is using. And then here's the MAC address and the Ethernet type that's being used here. So all that information gets pulled in. This bit of information gets pulled in from Configuration Manager, this bit from the client. And if you don't have any information, if it hasn't been pulled in ever from the client, this will be empty, and it'll also indicate as such that you need to pull in that information. On the software tab, the first bit is the Configuration Manager software information. So this is information that's coming in from Configuration Manager. So this shows you what software you have in Configuration Manager itself, or what's being tracked on that client by Configuration Manager, things like Visual Studio, SQL Server, and you can see there's 93 separate titles here. So as you flip through things like Microsoft Help Viewer, SQL Server, Common Files, I'm looking at a client here. So on this particular client, I think I have Visio installed, so I'm gonna go ahead and do a quick search for Visio here. Maybe I don't. Thought I did. Oh, nope. So one thing is that's what Configuration Manager is tracking. If I go to client data here, this client data is brought in just recently. It was brought in via the pull request. We also have the opportunity in this view to actually repair software and uninstall software. So this is a remote manage functionality to provide these troubleshooting tools. So by bringing in that remote manage data, we can actually work with that remote manage data on the client itself. So looking at this, let's see if this one thinks Visio is installed. Yeah, this one knows Visio is installed. So what's basically happened is I installed Visio prior to the software inventory running on this machine. So the client data being pulled in shows me that Visio was installed, but the other data does not, based on the time difference and whether or not the software inventory has pulled that into Configuration Manager. So I can see that Visio is actually installed on this machine. I can repair it, or I can even uninstall it. Looking at available updates. Available updates will show if there's any available updates for the client that Configuration Manager is tracking. In my particular environment, it's not showing any. There's no date updates that are currently pending for this particular client. It's fully up to date. We can also have the option to click pull now if we wanted to pull the most recent data and check again and see if there's any available updates for the client. You can see that the spinner is now going as it's reaching out to the actual client itself from the server side. So my particular machine does not need access to that client that I'm accessing the website with, but the server itself does need to have access. No available updates for my particular machine. From the processes side of thing, that most recent update I just did also brings in a list of processes. So you can see the processes that are available here. One of the things I know is running is Chrome. So you can see that I have a bunch of Chrome processes running on that particular machine. Gives me the thread count, also gives me the ID, and then the path of the actual application. One thing this also allows me to do, thanks to the remote manage information, is I can actually terminate a process. So if there's a rogue process or a process I don't want running on a particular user's machine when I'm helping troubleshoot with them, or if something's just not working quite right, I can actually go in here, and as long as I can see the process, I can terminate the process. The same thing applies to services. When I run that remote manage information, the services information will pull back any services that are available. Not sure what's going on there. We'll look at that in a minute here. Basically, in the services view, you get a list of services that are available to you, and that list of services, you can also stop a service and restart a service. And for the primary users, we can see the primary users that are assigned to a particular machine. If I open this up, I can actually assign a new primary user to the machine. And if there's an error, then I can actually go back and I can look at the logs here. And the logs will give me information. I think I'm having a caching issue on my particular slow machine. We'll pull it up again. But I can go back and look at the logs when there's an error, and I can see what the error was that was returned. If necessary, I can go into the actual platform logs, and we can look at what errors were shown in there as well. So just go ahead and bring this back up. There we go. So now I can see the services here. You can see that I can actually start the service or stop the service. So if I had something like Windows time broker service, I could stop this service. It's running right now. It's manual. I could stop it, and we could watch it stop actually on the client itself, and then we could restart it as well. From here, we saw the primary users. So here's the primary user that I was myself on this particular machine, and the only one that actually uses it. I can manually assign a primary user. And like I said, for some reason, that's not letting me do that. If I go here and go to my logs, you can see that I add primary user, something to do with the path here. So success is false, and then it tells you that this is what was returned. So I have the most recent beta running on here, so we might have changed something here, and perhaps it's not quite working yet. But this is out, and this is in the 3.0 version. I'm running on the 3.01 version. So this is available today in the True Control Center. So this is all the summary information, all within Service Manager. So this is the big integration of two products. And as we go through this, we'll continue to do this more and more. So let's see, I have one question before I move into actually showing the True Control Center itself. Do all the remote manage commands run under the analyst rights or some service account set up in TCC? The remote manage runs under a service account that is set up in TCC, and then you can actually provide analyst rights to individuals based off of permissions set up inside TCC. So if we go to TCC, so this is the True Control Center itself. This is our main landing page. Underneath our settings and then security settings, we actually have the ability to set whether or not somebody has access. Basically, if they have access to manage a client machine, then they have access to the remote manage tools. And that comes along the thinking that if you are allowing them to go in and change aspects of the machine, including adding and removing software, then they should be able to run particular queries and help troubleshoot that machine as well. In the future, we will expand the RBAC so that we can actually scope down individual tabs within Remote Manage as well. So looking at security rights section, you can see here we have the computers, and as long as they have the modify for computers, then they will see the Remote Manage as well. So if I was to select portal admins have everything, so it's not a good example, but from here you can actually select computers, you'd select modify. Once you do that, in the computers view, the slide out would then work for an analyst inside the Service Manager portal. So that's the required permissions that they'd require here in order for it to work there. And then from here, when I right click on a machine, I can go to Remote Manage and it'll pop up. I'll show you real quick what it looks like when a machine is not accessible. Thought I had one here. I guess all mine are online right now. We can reboot one, watch what happens. But again, this is the Remote Manage flyout. So here's inside the control center. You can see obviously there's extensive similarities, which is what we're really shooting for. We also have the ability to go to users, and as we go through this, this will be updated as well, and this users view will be very similar to the view that you see for Remote Manage. Right now, we don't have that same idea of user information. We just have what's available down here at the bottom. But that will be changing in 3.1 of CCC. So within the next month or two, we'll release 3.1 and it'll include a new user's flyout. And that flyout will also be integrated into the Service Manager portal at the same time when we release them. And what that allows you to do is it allows you to get information, allows you to view what computers this user, so things like this will be available in that flyout in a more readable fashion. We'll also include additional information, so a lot of this will be laid out but in a view that you can actually tell what's going on. We'll also be bringing the actions in there, same as the others, so they won't have to be just from the right-click menu here. But as you can see, in this version of TCC, we also have the ability to unlock and reset passwords. That functionality will be becoming a part of the flyout, and then the flyout will be integrated into your support portal, so your analyst portal, the SMP. So that flyout will be available there, and you'll be able to reset or unlock a user's password directly from within the SMP itself. So with that, that's pretty much it for the integration. Oh, the one thing I wanted to show you guys was running PowerShell. So let's look back at these commands here. Also want to show you bringing up the $sign stuff. So going through the actions and logs, when you look at this here, we can run the PowerShell here. So we have a little PowerShell prompt that pops out. What this is going to do is it's going to actually run PowerShell commands against the particular client. So say I wanted to get content of the C drive. I can go ahead and type in that PowerShell command and hit run. Oh, and it won't let me have access to the C drive, which is fine. Let's see where we're at right now. Oh, it's expecting the parameter path. Well, my particular client that I'm running Remote Manage as apparently doesn't have that capability, so let's just do a git process. So we git process command, run the command, and now we're waiting for the results to come back. So it'll run the PowerShell command and then it'll return the results. And so you can see here, this is all the processes that are currently running on that particular machine. So if we wanted to get a particular one, we could actually, let's do git service And let's do CCM exec. We'll go ahead and run that command. And there we have that command exists. So I could do a git service CCM exec select status. So now I can see the name is CCM exec, which I knew, but the status is running. So if I wanted to, I could actually restart that command and everything there. I could log this file out. I could have it reach out to something else, run an additional script, a script that's stored someplace else. So all sorts of stuff I can do from there. I can get the current date on that particular machine if I want to know if the date time settings on that machine are set correctly. So we can see that they are. I can even do a host name to make sure that the host name is what we expect it to be. And who am I? So you can see who I'm logged in with. Just an example of the PowerShell, and then you can, of course, scroll up through that. So pretty awesome to be able to run PowerShell remotely against the machine directly from the web console here. As I mentioned before, if we look at one of the client machines that I have some of this stuff installed on, let's see here. So we also have our Saracen App Launcher, which will allow you to do things like launch Explorer windows to various things, and this is just an example. So Explorer window of that particular client to the C drive, and it also provides an upgrade. You can see that this is highlighted. There's an upgrade available for the current version that I have. So let's go ahead and download that and make sure I'm running the most recent before we run anything else. While I'm doing that, I'll ask for Brian. Brian has a question here. Do any of the tasks run in remote manage get logged into the action log? The tasks all get logged in the action log, but if you're running something in PowerShell, the task I don't believe does. So let's take a quick look here at what we're just doing. So obviously I'm accessing this from a different client now. So from a different client, I pulled up remote manage on the same machine, so against the same machine. And if I look at the logs here, I can see in the logs that I actually am, yes, okay, so good. We did do this most recently. It was a new change. Right before release, we made sure that even the PowerShell commands were put in. So I wasn't sure that made 3.0 or 3.01. So here you can see that each time you run a PowerShell command, it says who ran it, and then it says what was run and what machine it was run against. Another question, TCC action log versus service manager action log, meaning if in the support portal and perform a computer repair, does any logging occur into SCSM log? No, nothing occurs into the SCSM log. You're actually bringing up the remote manage from TCC, so everything gets logged into TCC. That user, while he's accessing the TCC from Service Manager, still needs to have the proper permissions inside the Control Center. And all the actions are logged against the client in Control Center. Now, one thing that is of note is if you have particular reporting requirements or particular logging requirements or those sorts of things, everything in TCC, in terms of remote manage at least, is accessible via OData endpoints. So you can actually utilize things like PowerShell to access your OData endpoints to pull the logs. So you can see the logs, you can monitor the logs that way. You could actually perform some of the changes to those via the endpoints. So you can actually add a client to a collection using PowerShell and OData. So it didn't have to be PowerShell, it could be Node.js if that's what you're into. You could also view processes via Node or PowerShell, and even add and remove primary users via Node or PowerShell. Obviously what you're using just has to have the proper permissions. So going back to our launcher here, okay, so the launcher is updated. If we go in here and we go back to our remote manage, and go to our actions and logs. These are local actions, which means that they require the application launcher to be installed. So I'm going to look at, I'm on client 02, so I'm going to go ahead and look at client 01. You see client 01 hasn't had any data pulled for 6 days. If we go to actions and logs here, I can launch a remote desktop using the application launcher. Here's remote desktop being launched directly to the client 01 machine. Go ahead and cancel that out. If I would like, I can use control and configuration manager's remote control. So I can go ahead and launch that from here as well. And if it doesn't launch for some reason, let's go ahead and click that so I don't have to keep clicking that. If it doesn't launch, there's a realistic possibility that this client doesn't have it installed. So if I go down here, I can view the logs on the application launcher. And you can see that it attempted to launch the remote control, but it can't find the remote control in any of these paths. So it didn't find it in the app launcher path, it didn't find it in the program files path. So it was not found. If you actually have the launcher up when you do this process, so say you can test all these obviously from here, which is cool because you can actually go through and test them and it gives you an example of what that looks like. You could even call the app launcher from a separate web application or from URL if you ever wanted to. But you can see this is what it's doing. If I'm in here and I click it here, it'll launch it and then it does launch and goes into the log. So I have to install the remote control. We try it from the configuration manager server here in a little bit. But from here we can also launch a log folder. So if I click launch log folder, it'll launch the folder up. And as you can see, it launched the log folder to client 01 and it took me directly to the $$ Windows CCM logs. Now, one key here is that you actually, the user himself is accessing that $. So he has to have the permissions as a user to do that on a particular client. So you couldn't do it just willy-nilly. You couldn't do it just because you have access to the CCM doesn't mean you can get into all the files on the machine. You have to actually have access to those files for this to work. But you can see that it's really quite convenient because if you've ever worked with Configuration Manager, clicking on a log folder and getting to the logs expedites a process that otherwise takes a good portion of time. So same thing with the $. You can click that there and it'll launch it to the C share. And again, there's an application launcher log. So if we update the log here, we can see where it's launched this to here. So this is the commands that are being run. All right, if there's any other questions, take questions right now. About what we saw today, about what's coming in the future, comments. All right. Well, I don't see any additional questions. I hope I've answered all the ones that came up so far. And I hope you guys will take a look. If you do, oh, here's one. Is there an option to delete an SCCM record remotely? By that, I believe you mean for the particular machine itself. So if we look at this here, that's actually what this delete is right here. So this is a server action against CCM. So you can click delete and it will actually remove that machine from CCM. Now, it could pick it up again later if you delete it and it still has a client on it, and the client then gets rediscovered. But if the client's been removed and the machine's been removed, you can actually go into these settings there and go ahead and delete that particular machine. How much of the action section is out of the box? So out of the box being the release version of True Control Center, everything you've seen here is in the release version of True Control Center. So version 3, which is the initial release for the renamed CMP or Configuration Manager Portal, is True Control Center. This is all in True Control Center out of the box. Not a single one of these actions is custom. So Brian asks, if you remove a client from SCCM, but it is still an SCSM CI, will it just be blank? You'll actually get a flyout. The flyout will come up, but it'll let you know that that particular machine was not found in Configuration Manager based on its DNS name. So it'll let you know that that machine no longer exists in SCCM. Are there any messaging options to send to users? No, not yet. One thing is they do get a notification on, say, a shutdown or a reboot, which is built into Windows, and we follow the same protocol. We're just using shutdown commands. So they get, I think, a 60-second letting them know that that's being run. We do provide, excuse me, we do provide, confirmation for anything that would be destructive to the user, things that would either require intense load on the machine, cause the machine to restart, things like hardware inventory and software inventory cycle runs in the background, so we don't provide confirmation for those things. But reboot, shutdown, group policy, pretty much any of the computer tools outside of PowerShell we do provide for. In the future, we'll be looking at notifications. We also have a future release of this that will incorporate the Cireson ticker. So you'll be able to install a ticker client on the user's computer, and you'll be able to utilize the ticker from within the True Control Center. So you'll be able to have pop-ups on a user's computer to let them know that today at whatever time we'll be restarting your computers for an update or that sort of thing. So you'll be able to actually provide pop-ups through that system. And that will all be controlled and distributed from within the True Control Center, and then accessed via the small little ticker client that goes on the end user's machine. Third-party launcher support. So Brian, I assume you're talking about being able to add additional tools into this launcher or something like, okay, so with that, that is on the horizon. So we want to be able to provide a custom section where you can provide a, say, a location or path and then a URL, and that would allow you to launch a custom application. With that being said, something that exists within the True Control Center already is the ability to use external tools. So we have this external tools option here, and what that does is it's URL based. So if we go to our general settings here, we have an external tools section, and this section you can actually add a tool, and what you do is you provide a name for the tool, say Explorer, C $, let's just do C programming data. What I can do is I can actually look at my little app launcher here, and I can look at this root path. I can even type in that I want to go to the client 01. I want to go to C $, and I want to go to the program data folder. maybe even, yeah, we'll just go to the program data folder for now. So with that, it gives me an example, and I can take this example here. I can actually paste this example, and then all I need to do is change the client to instead be a variable for a computer name. So that gives me this variable C program data slash, got an extra slash here. So that gives me the URL that will launch against the app launcher. And I can go ahead and click OK. Now I have this external tool. If I go to computers here, I can right click on client 01 and I can go to external tools and I can say launch Explorer C program data, and it'll actually launch the application launcher and go to the C program data on that particular folder. So you can see that that just worked there. And if I go to my app launcher here and say I go down to the app launcher logs, you can see that what it did is it made a call to the Cireson App Launcher, and it passed in this program data information and then launched it from there. So that's just an example. And then in the future, the idea being you could add your own configuration. We'll read a custom configuration script. It'll follow a specific template, so if it's not something that can fit within the boundaries of the template, then odds are it wouldn't initially be supported. It depends on how those things go. It also depends on how popular the app launcher itself becomes, and and how much request we get for that. This was designed by me, and it's just a little custom application that we give away for free on our software downloads page. But it's designed to work with Configuration Manager, and the whole idea is to work around the problems you have in a web interface where you can't launch a specific application from the desktop in most cases, especially the old applications that we use. So the idea there is to provide the Configuration Manager console capabilities from within a web interface, which is something nobody else is doing. So just one of many things we're doing to provide you guys with the best we can. And so it's Brian asks something about what if the client in SCCM has a duplicate name. We go off of a DNS name, which you can't have a duplicate DNS name. So because DNS name has to be unique, we go off of the DNS name. Sorry about that. So that's to answer that question, Brian. All right. Well, that is all the time we have today. If you guys have any questions, there's two Brians asking questions here. That's why. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to email me, seth.cousins@cireson.com, and I will gladly respond. You can also hit us up on the community, and if you have any requests for demos or trials or anything along those lines, just go ahead and email us at sales@cireson.com as well. And thank you all for attending, and I look forward to speaking with you again soon. Thanks.